If you've ever tried to create fabric seams in Blender, you'll know how frustrating it is. You think it's simple because you've already sculpted the rest of the thing, and then you go, all right, seams, let's just slap it in there. And then you go, how? It's really complex. Like, you could sculpt it, you could texture paint it, you could model it, but they're all extremely time consuming. They require multiple objects baking. Blender's really bad at a lot of that stuff. There's one method that's not bad for quick and dirty solutions. I taught it in my teddy bear tutorial using vertex colors, but that does create artifacts, blocky shapes and things, and it's not very detailed. The method I'm going to show you in this video is called the UV texturing method. I was going to call it the Andrew Price copyright trademark seam method, but I'll call it the UV texturing. It's flexible, it's non-destructive, and it doesn't increase the render times at all, and it is super realistic. It's the sharpest of all the, even if you bake it, it's sharper than that. It's great. So let's get into it. So this is where we left off with our couch. The cushion's looking good, all textured, all good, but they are missing seams. By the way, if you're wondering, someone in the comments said, I think the base is too sharp. I disagree. I would love to cut my leg open on the side of this couch. Of course, we will be beveling it, don't worry. It's just easy, so I've just left it right to the end. The cushions is the main bit. That's you know, focus on what matters, and that's the hard bits here. So anyways, we are going to select one cushion that we're going to apply our seam to. I'm going to hit number pad / which takes you into local mode, just FYI, and go into edit mode, and this is where we're going to get into our seams. So we're going to split our view here, go to the node editor, and this is where we actually add in our seam. So we're going to be using an image texture of a seam, and thankfully there are plenty around because that's what brushes use. So if you look at ZBrush brushes, Substance Painter brushes, whatever, is based off a displacement that's just being drawn out onto something. That's what we're going to use. We're not going to use it like as a brush. We're going to just use the texture in the node editor. So I'm going to be using this texture from Polygon. Obviously, you don't have to buy this one from me. You can let me scrounge around in the rubbish bin. Maybe I'll find a couple of bucks in there to feed my family. But it doesn't matter where you get it from, but you need one. I'm sure there are some free ones out there. But anyways, I'll put the link for this one in the description, as well as a link for this one, which is actually free. You just have to have a free account at Polygon, and you can download this one. It looks pretty similar to the one that we're going to use in this, so go ahead and get that. But anyways, once you've downloaded it, we're going to go texture, image texture, and we're just going to load in, open, a map that looks like this. So this gray displacement map, essentially. This one is actually a Photoshop file, but Blender reads Photoshop files now, so that's nice. Make sure you set this to non-color data, very important. And yeah. We're going to use this as like in the bump map part of the channel. So we're the bump map is currently being occupied by our creases, which we did in the last step. So I'm just going to temporarily override that. They're very easy to blend later on, but let's just, so we can focus on the seams, just put that in there. And you won't be able to see anything because it's too low. By the way, shout out to Ali 32-bit. In the last video, he commented and let me know that you shouldn't actually be changing the strength value of a bump map, which is what we did for the creases in the last part. Instead, just leave strength at 1 and instead adjust the distance value. And I tested it, and it's totally true. It actually, adjusting strength like crushes and compresses the values into like this, doesn't look right, whereas distance actually like keeps the dynamic range and kind of like moves it down. Anyways, very important. So that's what I've done. I've just set the distance at really low. But anyways, I got to increase it now because we want to actually see what our texture looks like. Okay, so it's just like a fake bump. All right. Now the reason this is really huge and over the top of the mesh there is that it is using our UV map. So if we split the view again and then go UV editor, I'll just hit X there, go into edit mode, and you can see this is our UV map that we had from before. So we don't want to adjust this because this is what our fabric is using, you know, the correct scale for our fabric. Instead, what we want to do is create another UV map, which you might not have done before, but you end up doing that sometimes when you get advanced into texturing. And we just want to rename this. I'm going to call it seams. By the way, I don't know why. I don't know if yours is the same or if it's just me. Double clicking doesn't work to rename something. It's triple click. I need to triple click
Never had that in any software before, but I'm like, how am I supposed to like rename this thing? And I was like hitting it like a lot, and then it finally just worked. Triple click. I guess that's a bug. But anyways, seams. Okay, once you've done that, then by default, if you don't have anything connected here, it's just going to use the default UV map, which is the one that has this active camera next to it. So instead, because we want this to use just this new UV map, we go Input, UV map, and then select from the drop-down seams, and then connect it like that.
Now, you'll notice nothing has changed, and that's because when you create a new UV map, it just duplicates the one that you previously had there. So it's just using identical UV map. So what we want to do now that we've got this separately set up, is we can just completely wreck our UV map here, destroy it, and make it just align with where we want seams to go. So if we load in that image that we just put up there into the UV image editor, load this just so that we can see it. There it is, like so. You can see that it runs vertically top to bottom, and there's like the one place that that the stitch is. So what I want to do is go into face select mode up there, and then I want to select holding down Alt and hold down Alt and Shift to select 2 rows of wherever I want there to be a stitch. Okay. Then you can see that we've now just isolated that in the UV map, and you can see that if we were to line this up over here, we would get a stitch that would appear right there. Now, this is fiddly. I will be honest, this is the worst part of this entire method. It's a lot of buggery with the UV layout. So what you need to do is essentially select an island by hitting L. And then in your properties, this is the easiest way I found it anyway, is to set this to 0.5, and then it will position that exactly in the middle. Then if you repeat that for all of the islands that you have, in this case, we've got one down here that's laying down. So I'm going to hit R to rotate and then type in 90. For some reason, it's like really slow at the moment. Any editing in the UV image editor is slow, and it's not to do with it being displayed over here. It's just... it's really frustrating. So that's what makes this step, it's like there's a lag between every little click and button press. Anyways, once you've done that, you can see that they're all lined up exactly in the middle. And if I select them, then hit S to scale upwards, and then if I increase this, provided I've done everything right, we should see on the left-hand side some stitching start to appear. And that's the gist of the tutorial. Hopefully now it's clear exactly what we were doing. Yeah, and because this is a tileable, it's a brush, right? So it should be tileable. There's no like visible seams within the seam. And it's also like crystal, like because it's perfectly like, when you brush something with a brush, you never get it like perfectly aligned. It always comes out blurry depending on, whether you're looking at it front on. But this way it's perfectly crisp and clear, so it's great. Now, this horrible seam up here, you can't remove something from like a UV map. However, like without like making it an entirely new material. But what you can do is in your edit mode here, if we select everything other than the area that we want this stitch to appear on, so Control I will invert our selection. So we've now got everything else. If I was to, if you just reset it, so U and then reset, it puts all of those faces like completely occupying, overlapping just the UV layout. And then if I hit S and then like 0.1, something really small, you can see it's made it this single small face, and you can see the left and right hand side have gray. And we're going to tell Blender that gray part should be treated as like no bump, like completely ignore it. So provided we position it somewhere to the left or right, let's go out of that, you can see that we don't have any stitching appearing. So it's actually like part of this texture, but it's not really, because it's just a completely flat, uniform part of it. So it's kind of like I don't know, I was quite proud of myself when I discovered this. I'm sure I'm not the first one, but I was like, yeah, that's not bad. It kind of works quite well. Now, something you'll note is that there's this kind of like this annoying lip, and that's because this is a brush and it's designed for displacement. So, there's a lip with a stitch, there's a lip where it goes down, but it doesn't really look right necessarily with our mesh because the rest of the mesh isn't affected by this, so it just kind of looks a little weird. So what I want to do instead is tell it, basically, don't treat this gray area like gray, because actually it's also kind of raising that a little bit. Anything that's gray is being slightly raised. The bump map treats things that are black as level, and then everything lighter just goes above it. But this is, it's not what we want. So what I want to do is right between here and here, I'm going to add in a map range node. You could do this with a color ramp node, but supposedly the map range node preserves dynamic range better. It's a little janky to figure out, like, what does these values do? From just means like the values that you start with, to is the values that it outputs. So we want to keep the to exactly the same because we want to keep the dynamic range at 0 to 1. But the from, we want the gray value of like a 0.5-ish to begin to, we want that to become black. So I'll control shift click on this so we can actually visualize what's happening. But if we were to increase this, you can see that eventually at around about 0.4, it gets to the stage where everything is ignored and nothing is there until the stitch appears, right? So that's basically what I want. So if we have a look at this now, through here, the lip is gone. And you can play with this. If you weren't happy with it, you can make things like completely dissolve. Just with that range there, but that's pretty good. And obviously, if this is overkill for you, you can turn down the distance value there to be something a little less offensive. You don't want this like jarring bump appearing there. Now, I removed the creases, so we want to add that back in here. So thankfully, this is black and white and this is black and white. That's really easy to combine. So we can do that with, it's going to be blending two white values, right? So what we want to do, mix RGB, take this and put this in here, this and put this in here. And then I'm going to set this to screen because it's taking combining light with light. If it was black with black, you'd use multiply. But anyways, so what I want to do is I want to keep the bottom value at the map because you're combining them and you're putting them into one bump map node. You want to set the distance for the maximum one, like the most distance should be the one that's occupying the top. So this stitch should be above the wrinkles, essentially. And now that I've done that, provided that is coming through correctly, if we look through here, we should see there should be some faint wrinkles appearing, maybe. Do we have any wrinkles? Oh, of course, I didn't even add it into the height box. That would be why. When we do that, we should see an overkill of wrinkles. Come on now. Oh, it's been a long day. This might be one of the most tricky tutorials I've done because it's like so many little intricate little steps and trying to teach it in a way which is easy to digest. But anyways, okay, so I wanted that to look like that. Provided you've got the stitches to the right height, if you want the wrinkles to be more like less than what you have there, you would just adjust this. But I mean, that looks okay for now. We can adjust that later if needs be. But anyways, so we've done, you might want to put a little stitch going down here. You might not. It's up to you. But one thing I want to show you is that the first time I made this tutorial, I literally said, you're going to have to repeat this step across every every cushion. And you will have to do it separately for here and here. However, if you've got objects that have the same number of edges, you can copy the UV layout. I only just learned this, like you're learning it at the same time as me, because between recordings, I discovered this. You can copy the UV layout. So what you do is, just like when you copy a material, you hit like, Control L, right? And you would select materials, but you can transfer UV maps. What you need to do before it, because we've got two UV maps, we've got seams, it'll transfer it to whatever is active. So for each of the objects, before you transfer it, you need to create a new UV map and then call it seams. Okay, so like that, click, seams, and then make sure on each of the objects that the seams is the one that is selected. All right, and then holding down shift and select the last one that you've just done the UV layout for last. So that should be yellow. Then hit Control L and then transfer UV maps. And if you've done it right, crossing your fingers, it should have copied those UV layouts, which is incredible. I was like, oh my goodness, that makes this method finally not so tedious. It is a little tedious.
I won't lie, but at least it's not terrible. Now, I will leave you to do the rest of these cushions by yourself. However, I do want to mention, show you one little thing, because while this one had perfectly straight things, the squares were perfectly square and laid out, some of yours might not be. Like in this case here, these are kind of crooked. So I'll show you what I mean. Let's say we want to have these edges, rows, whatever we call them, rows of faces. We want to have them running through the middle here. Well, if we were to do the exact same thing as we did before, first of all, make sure you create a new UV map, otherwise you'll be editing the other one and you'll hate yourself because you'll have to go back. Rotate that by 90. If we were to put all of these in the middle, right, just like what we did before, select this one and select this and go 0.5. Let's just make this a little bit bigger so we can do this a little bit better. Yeah, this is one of those tutorials that is, you could get lost on pretty quickly because it's a lot of pissing around with UV maps. So when we do this, you can see that this line isn't perfectly straight, so it's all kind of wonky, right? And that is not ideal. In fact, if you were to look at how it looks on your actual mesh, you might see at some points it starts to clip through. Provided it's not clipping through, it's not a problem. All right, but let's say yours was clipping through. It's kind of clipping through down there, right? What you need to do is essentially hit B to do box select and then just mouse over it like that. And with all of that edge selected, hit S, X, and then 0. And that is how you straighten something in Blender. It's annoying. It's really annoying. There is a there's an add-on called UV Squares, which is great. It is a paid product. However, you can get it off GitHub for free. It's one of those, I think, you can buy it to help support the developer, but it's really helpful. Basically, it has this little tab down here, and then you just click to grid by shape, and then it'll automatically do that for you. And that's a huge time saver. So I definitely recommend that. I'll put the link in the description, the Blender Market, as well as the GitHub links. You can all access it. But anyways, so now that you've done that, you could see, obviously, it's a lot easier to control those. But yeah, that is something that you're going to have to do. So one thing to also note is, like, don't overdo it. Like, you don't have to put seams wherever you have seams in your model, right? That would take a really long time. So for example, this actual part of like these sidearm cushions, I don't have the reference here, but that's actually one continuous piece. There isn't a seam that goes down there. I think seams are generally undesirable for furniture makers. They don't want to have seams everywhere. So where they can get away with having one continuous face, they will. So you only need to have one seam going that way. And also don't put seams where you're not going to see it. Like, don't bother doing the back side of that if you're not going to see the back side of it. You might need to if you're going to transfer it to another object, but yeah, like, just, use your time wisely. Anyways, with all this said, what I'm going to do now is jump to, I'm going to finish doing these faces here. So I'm going to put ones there, there, and there. Oh, actually, sorry, I should actually teach you this part as well. Okay, so one more thing, right? So this, right, where it connects, let's change this view here because that's very frustrating. Where this joins into this stitching here, there's no real easy way to do it. You will have to just sort of make them sort of smash together. It's better if there's not a gap, right? Sometimes this part here, there can be like a big gap here. So it's actually preferable, I found, to have the UV map sort of jut into another stitch and then, do it that way rather than having a big gap, because the gap will be more obvious to the camera rather than the smashing into the other stitch, which is what we're doing right now. So, it's not, that's not particularly pretty, but when the camera's far away over here, you've got cushions, you've got everything on it, it's highly unlikely somebody is going to notice and go, hey, that doesn't line perfectly with the stitch above it, right? Like, it's unlikely. So with that in mind, I'm going to continue now to the final result of all of these done, and I will see you there. And we are now done. So you can see I added seams in some places and let the viewer fill in the imagination. There
there's a seam under there. There's a seam under there, right? I just put one at the top. Take shortcuts where you can. It doesn't take that long. I don't know, 15 minutes. It's just a lot of clicking. You feel like you're going to get carpal tunnel. But, you do it once and then you're fine. But you also have to do it for the frame because our couch has a soft body frame. Why? Why you do this? Why not just make it like plexiglass or, I don't know, metal, right? Who wouldn't want a metal steel frame of a couch, right? So we gotta make this, we gotta make it soft, right? So thankfully, it doesn't involve any sculpting. You could actually do sculpting since there's technically like a little bit of waviness in there, but hey, there's only so many hours in the day. So what we're gonna do is add a bevel, right? Oh, I'm wearing headphones. That's weird. I felt like I was shouting, and it's like, yeah, I am probably shouting. So the bevel, when you add a bevel modifier, you can see that it's kind of, it's terrible because our scale is not set to 1, right? So clear your scale, and then you get that. So make sure you do that for all of your objects, all the frames. Then you can see that these two objects here, they have a mirror modifier being used. And except this one down here, this one doesn't. So I am going to make this one a mirror. So I'm just going to delete that face in the middle there, move this across. And then now that I've done that, I should be able to select all these 3 here and then hit Control L modifiers. And now it's copied that modifier, okay? And I'll move this across because it's got clipping turned on. Okay, so I'm just trying to save time and sort of batch do these operations. I'll change my offset to be something like that. So this is essentially now where we get to decide how smooth do we want our corner to be, how much, like fabric do we want it to look like. We do have to make a seam appear along there, so you might want to give it just like a little bit extra than what it comes with. And as for the number of segments, it's totally up to you. I think the problem is you want to have a seam right in the middle there. So you can see, I don't know if I can actually move my camera in, but there is a sort of triangle like that. And that's good. That's what you want, because then it's easy to place a seam along those, going all the way down there and all the way down there. Whereas if you had 3, you wouldn't be able to as easily do that. So you should either go 2 segments or 4 segments. In my case, I'm going to go 4. All right, now that I've done that, make sure everything else is okay, and then I'll click. Oh, I actually want my bevel to be above my mirror modifier because that'll save me some time. So I'll hit Control L and then select modifiers, and now these 2 should have copied on. Oh, one other thing as well, limit method. If you don't select angle, it means that it's going to be creating like a bevel even here where there shouldn't be a bevel, but it'll try and create one. So select angle, and then it will do that for you. So let's do that. Control modifiers. Okay, cool. So now I've done that, I'm going to apply my bevel. Apply it like that. Oh, it only did it for the top ones, so make sure you do it for the bottom ones as well. And then we're going to, because we haven't UV unwrapped this, right? So we have to do that. So I'm, as you can see, selecting the middle edge along this, all the way along. And this is obviously where the seam is going to go. Previously, we didn't have to select all these because we just select similar and went sharp or whatever. But because this is a bevel, that's not going to particularly work very well. So you just have to do it. But thankfully, these are pretty simple geometric objects. So it's not too hard. All right, so once I've done that, Control E, seam, go UV image editor, and hit the U button, right? You select it, U, unwrap. All right, now I'll speed that up whilst I do the exact same thing for these 2 down here. All right, all the objects are now done. So I can select these and then select my cushion here that I want to copy the material from last, Control L and materials. And now it has the fabric. Now, something you'll probably notice is that like along like this face here, you can see that looks really like screwed up. Like something's going on there. And that's because it's a bevel it's got a bevel on it and it doesn't really know how to handle it. When you hit U and you went unwrap, you can change the method from angle based to conformal, which is something that I have literally just discovered as I'm recording this. And that will fix that whole bevel problem. And yeah, that looks a lot better. The other thing is that the scale of this, because you don't want to have to adjust the actual scale within the material
material, because then it will adjust the scale for all of these as well. I just want to adjust this UV map to the right scale. So I'm just going to scale this up until these threads at the top here match the threads down there, or vice versa, I guess. All right, do the exact same thing down here. You unwrap and then select conformal, and then crease that until that's matched, and then do the same thing right here. Excellent. And then of course we need to do the exact same thing that we did with our cushions here to create a seam. So I'll do one, and then it's up to you, right? And when the teacher says that, I'm going to do one on the board, and then you need to do it in your own time or for homework. What's up with homework, huh? You know, now that you're an adult, it's like you think about what on earth were the teachers doing, giving kids like 6 hours of work to do when they get home. Like, they're already learning in school, right? And then they're just like, I don't know, this is like not an original point, since a number of people have said it far better than I have, but it's like, this is kind of dumb, right? Like, what are we doing here with these kids? It's, like I heard like my sister's daughter, she's got a 8-year-old, 7-year-old, something like that. And yeah, she gets like a couple of hours homework each night. It's ridiculous. It's like, so instead of like drawing or like playing, socializing with other kids, they'll just be doing stuff like that, which is not good. Now, why is this not working exactly? Oh, there it is. Oh, okay. I thought it just wasn't displaying at all. I was getting worried that the seam wasn't appearing. It is there. It's just really small. So anyways, continue that for these objects. I'll do that now. And we've finished. Finally, I feel like celebrating. I've got the seams that go down here. I got seams all the way around it. Takes 10, 15, 20, 25 minutes, depending on what's going on. A couple of things I'll just make as a change is, obviously those creases are like way too high. It's probably bugging a lot of you. So as I think I mentioned, you've got to set the distance to whatever you want the maximum bump to be at, since we're combining two things, and then the screen value will control whatever is in the bottom one, which in this case is the creases. So if I want the creases to go down but not the seams, I just need to adjust that like that. And then I have little fine wrinkles over everything, but nothing more. Oh, and also make sure, of course, that whenever you've got, wherever you have seams, wherever you are not supposed to have seams, of course, that is clear. And in this case, you can see I forgot to do that. So, I didn't do it deliberately so that I could remind you guys. No, I really didn't. It's a mistake. But there we go. One final advantage to doing this method is that we can actually color the stitches, or at least you can if you're using the brush that I am, because along with the brush having this, we also get this thread map, and because that'll line up with exactly this, all we need to do is make sure we use the exact same seams. And then this is a black and white mask, so if we add that into this base color here, we can make the thread color anything we want. So all you do is you add in a mix RGB node, drop it in right there, and then take the output of this and put that into the factor input. So that is now acting as a mask, and now this color here becomes those little seams there, those little stitches, stitch threads, whatever you want to call them. And that's really cool. So, you can go as aggressive or inaggressive as you want. Probably bright red is not the wisest design decision given the subtlety of the rest of the couch. But something small can just add, again, one of those little things that'll trick your brain into believing that what it's looking at mustn't be a render, because who would go to the trouble of coloring the threads of a couch? So, yeah. Our couch is technically now finished. So big clap and all that, but it is a little bare, typically when you have a couch in a room, there's some stuff on it, right? A little throw cushion, something. And this is actually the fun part, which is adding
Adding a cushion, which gives you an opportunity to throw some artistic flair into it, make it a bright red or a yellow, and a blanket, you can throw that on it. So that's going to be the next part of this tutorial, is adding in throw cushions and a blanket. So click here when the video is available, and I will see you there.